Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to Grilling JR with the voice of professional wrestling, Mr. Jim Ross. Jim, how are you, man?
I had a good week, Conrad. I'm doing good. Finally met with my surgeon on my hip replacement this week on Monday. He was very optimistic, and things are good. The implant, or whatever you call them, stuck is good, and so I got good news. It was good news. I turned the corner on my hip. It still hurts, but it's getting better daily. So that's good news. My radiation burn is shrinking. I think that the intravenous antibiotics was the way to go. I wish I'd have done it earlier, but it wasn't. They insisted I do it, but late in the game. So I tried it and it worked. So, but in any event, my hip is just still healing, but I can deal with that. And I can deal with it more now that I got good news that we're going to be fine. So it's all good. It's good stuff. My wound is not hurting. No pain there anymore. So that's great. I do have, like I said, I do have some pain in my hip, but it is getting better without a question. So I'm very optimistic today on my health. It's good. So all good. Just got to steer the course, man, and trust your doctors.
Well, man, I'm thrilled to hear the good news. You know, I know you've been going through it for the last few years. So to finally see some light at the end of the tunnel is really, really encouraging, just as a fan and a friend of yours, much less actually being you. So I'm thrilled to hear that for you. And selfishly, I'm hopeful that we get to see you behind the desk again and on a call. And boy, there's going to be a big match of brewing as folks listen to this. Last night, we saw a contract signing with Samoa Joe and Swerve Strickland. We are home stretching it for Dynasty, just a few weeks away in St. Louis. People are already talking about Will Ospreay and Bryan Danielson like it is a match of the year candidate, and the bell hasn't even rang yet. So if we can get you on that call, man, that would be fantastic. Pick up your tickets now. AEWTIX.com is where you can pick it up. And there's a lot of news to cover. We're going to be talking about WrestleMania 25 today. Kind of weird to think that was 15 years ago, but that will be our topic. But before we get there, I wanted to at least mention there's still a chance to pre-order your new book. Business is about to pick up, celebrating 50 years of wrestling in 50 unforgettable calls. And you can pre-order the book right now at jrbook50.com. If you haven't already pre-ordered, what are you waiting for? I've got an advanced copy. I absolutely love it. Silva loved it. I think you will too. So snatch it right now. jrbook50.com. You'll be one of the first to get it and you won't regret it. And of course, we got to ask you a little bit about all the news and notes in wrestling. You know, we're just a few days away right now from one of the biggest WrestleManias of all time, perhaps the biggest WrestleMania of all time. It's a 2-night affair, Saturday and Sunday. The Rock is back in the main event of night one. And everybody's asking questions. I want to ask you, Jim, do you think Cody, quote unquote, finishes the story this Sunday?
Oh, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's too logical not to do it. They told a very good, long arcing story. So I think it's the thing to do. That's just me. He's been on a great journey. The babyface chasing, getting beat up. They've done some very graphic angles to tell the story even more thoroughly. So yeah, I think Conrad, he's in the game. I think he's going to come out and prevail, but it should be a hell of a show, quite frankly. I think Rock helps it, obviously. How could having the Rock on a card not help it? Seriously. People get too much involved in the politics and the personalities and stuff, but it's hard to bitch about a show that's got Rock on it in a main event level. So I'm excited about that for those guys. Hope they do well. It's good. WrestleMania is good for the whole wrestling business, in my opinion.
I agree.
It gets people talking about pro wrestling. I think that's important. But yeah, I think Cody gets his hand raised in a very celebratory way on that'd be on Sunday, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll see how it works out. But they've told a good story there. They've done a good job of building that rivalry, that match. So we'll see how it works out. But I'm pulling for. It's just good for wrestling, and as long as wrestling is being enhanced in some shape, form, or fashion, that sounds like a win to me for all of us, no matter who you work for. So hopefully they'll do well, and people that are on the card will enjoy it and have fun. It's a memorable situation. It creates moments that they can't replicate anywhere else. So it's a pretty cool deal, and I'm excited. I don't know how much of it I'll watch over 2 days, but I'll pick my spots and check it out. No doubt about that. It was funny this week. I saw what the Iowa. What was it? It was Iowa and who'd they play Monday night? Wasn't LSU, was it? In any event, 12 million viewers is pretty scary.
Oh yeah, it was. It was Iowa at number 1, LSU number 3, and of course, Iowa won 94-87, highest rated women's basketball game in history. It's pretty impressive to see the influence that Caitlyn Clark has had on ladies college basketball. I mean, there's even a debate, Jim. Would she make more money if she just stayed in college as opposed to going to the WNBA? She's one of those once in a lifetime transformative players, no?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I don't know if she's the best female player of all time, but if she isn't, I don't know who is. She's delivered, and every time she's been challenged. So, she's fun to watch. I'll say that. She sure is hell fun to watch. She's a great shooter. And that may be her strong suit, is that her shooting is so on point. It's scary. So, I think it's going to be a fun Final Four. And certainly Caitlyn Clark, among other females, has done an amazing job of drawing awareness to women's college basketball. And they needed it. They got it. And now let's see how they grow from it.
I'm excited to see what's next for Caitlyn Clark, but I'm also excited to hear what you thought of the Roman Reigns documentary this past weekend. A&E has been doing these different biographies, if you will, and these superstar profiles, and the Roman Reigns episode got the special treatment. Paul Heyman put that one together, and it looked and felt a little different than some of the others. Have you had a chance to catch that one yet?
Yeah, I watched it. It was good. It was very good. I enjoyed it. Roman's it showed me how much he's grown, because he's a great storyteller verbally, and I thought it was really well done. And then at the end of the show, we saw the credits. Executive producer Paul Heyman, because nobody's going to put more of their heart and soul into a Roman Reigns documentary, sans Roman himself, than Paul Heyman. So Paul did a great job herding the chickens on that deal. It's good, and they should be proud of their work, because it was very entertaining.
We got to talk about everything that's going on in wrestling, not just WrestleMania. I wanted to mention that Dark Side of the Ring has been having a pretty fun season. As you and I are recording this, I had a chance to catch a few minutes of the Harley Race episode. I've yet to finish it, but I know that the Harley Race episode unearthed a lot of never before seen footage that I think was from the family. Did you have a chance to catch any of the Harley footage? What'd you think of that episode of Dark Side of the Ring, or just this season as a whole?
They've done a good job. Dark Side of the Ring guys have done a good job of editing, producing, putting together a good show. I enjoyed the hell out of it. Harley's documentary was real good. Like I said before we started recording, they could have done 2 hours on Harley easy if they had chosen to. His story is that deep and that thorough. So, but I enjoyed the Harley Race stuff. I knew Harley very well in my entire career. Now, he was around in his heyday when I broke into business in '74. Harley Race was a was the it guy.
Right.
He was the guy everybody, Harley. And he's one of those one-word names, kind of like The Rock or Stone Cold, two words. But you know what I'm saying. It was outstanding. So they've done a nice job of editing. Chris Chambers works on those projects. Good friend of mine. He's been there forever and does a hell of a job. And like I said, herding the chickens, because getting all those moving parts together to show some continuity, it's not easy. So it's good stuff. I enjoy documentaries in general, and when you get a documentary on a wrestler, then it's even better. So I thought they've done a good job, and probably the best work that Dark Side of the Ring has done, at least in my opinion, since they started doing this.
I wanted to also ask you some of the other things that have made headlines over the last week. Ronda Rousey has been doing a series of interviews promoting her book, and it feels like she's going scorched earth at times on WWE. She was even on, as you and I are recording, she was even on News Nation last night telling the story that has the internet abuzz. Have you caught any of Ronda's comments? What do you make of Ronda on her publicity tour for the book, taking so many shots at WWE?
Yeah, it's unsettling. Honestly, I don't know if that's the way to promote any product in a negative light. Negative light doesn't shine very brightly on most projects. I understand what she's doing. I understand why she's doing it. She wants to sell books, and I'm sure her book is good. She's very outspoken. She's very honest. But I think sometimes you got to unsaddle that negative horse, saddle it back up with something that's more positive. And that would be my suggestion to her. I'm a big fan of Ronda Rousey's.
Yeah.
I really, she's special. No one is ever quite like her. And, but she's awfully bitter right now. And like I said, sometimes the bitterness is a sensation or a seasoning. Steal a little line. That's a weak barbecue reference. But sometimes the seasoning is not as. Sometimes it turns you off a little bit. So I think she'd be better served talking about her book than talking about her experiences with WWE. And you can sure tell on the little bit that I've read or heard from her, she sure as hell is not a fan of Vince McMahon.
Speaking of Vince McMahon, we actually heard from Vince McMahon. I can't believe this is real, but the Monday before WrestleMania, we finally got a response from his lawsuit that was filed against him in January. And boy, that got a lot of people talking about the context of his response. But what I found most curious was the idea that he used the same attorney that just got $20 million out of WWE on behalf of MLW. And it was filed the Monday before WrestleMania. That just can't be happenstance.
All right.
What'd you make of that?
Well, the interest in pro wrestling, as I just said a few minutes ago, the high tide raises all ships.
Yes.
And that's exactly what it's done. He picked a time that pro wrestling is very topical, very timely. And so it didn't surprise me, quite frankly. I don't even know. I didn't read it. I don't know what he said. I'm sure it was, a typical Vince McMahon statement. Very, he's conclusive. He's very sure of what he's talking about. I'm tired of this whole story, to be honest with you. The Vince McMahon stuff the shelf life is expired in my view. I'm tired of it. It's too negative. And not that I'm trying to defend Vince. I'm not trying to defend anybody. It's just that it's the same piece of news that we're getting over and over. And maybe Vince will smarten up and lose that mustache. Looks like Don Amici or somebody, one of those old school actors. Don Amici mustache.
It looks like a villain in an old Western.
Yeah. Yeah. He's a saloon owner that runs the town. He's the Al Swear engine.
There you go.
the whole kit and caboodle. Look at that mustache, man. You're watching. You get us on YouTube, which you should. We just passed 100,000 viewers on YouTube, so that whole thing is growing like crazy.
GrillingJR.com is where you can catch us on YouTube. I do want to ask two more things before we get to our topic. WrestleMania 25 is on deck today, but you know, this is our one chance to sort of catch up on everything that's happened through the week in the world of professional wrestling. And Monday was a big day. The other thing that came out was an interview with Ariel Helwani talking to CM Punk, and they actually covered his time in AEW. Did you get a chance to catch that?
I saw a snippet of it, Conrad. I didn't see the whole thing. Again, you know, my life this week has been a great week health wise. That's what I'm focusing on. I'm tired of all the negative news, all the bad news, and all the controversial stuff. It's just, it's enough. It's enough. I think I mentioned to you that how much barbecue can a redneck eat?
Right.
You know, I'm tapping. You know, let's move on here. We got everybody's point of view. We understand. And no matter what anybody says in an interview, it's not going to solve the problems.
Right.
It's just, we're going to continue to wear that son of a bitch out.
Let me ask you a talent relations type problem or an issue, perhaps. I'm not trying to speak it into existence, but while I was recording with Eric Bischoff earlier in the week, I had an idea, or I guess I wondered, hey, what if, and this is worst case scenario, what if this Saturday night somebody gets hurt in the main event? I ask because we're asking Roman to go back to back. He hasn't wrestled back to back nights since May of 2022. We're asking Seth to come back after a pretty daunting knee injury. He hasn't had a ton of matches. I know we saw him wrestle on Monday, but you know, he was nursing that thing for a little bit. And now you got to think he's going to try to turn the volume up in his first WrestleMania main event with The Rock in the ring like this. And then there's Cody Rhodes. I mean, we know that dude wrestled with a torn pec, but hypothetically, if something disastrous was to happen and one of those three was not able to wrestle on Sunday, what would you do? I mean, I know you got Damian Priest hanging around with the Money in the Bank case, but even he himself on Saturday night is in a tag team ladder match. Those are very dangerous. This is a risky proposition to go back to back like this with some of your guys playing both nights, right?
Yeah, it's a calculated risk, no doubt. But I think, you know, unless they just go crazy in the ring doing wacky stuff, taking unnecessary chances, this match doesn't need unnecessary chances. It's the story's strong, and that's what you got to focus on, the story. And the story's been well told. And so, you know, you just hope something like that does not happen for anybody's sake. But if you do, they've got to come up with plan B off the top of their head. At least if somebody got hurt on Saturday, they'd have till Sunday to figure out exactly how they want to handle it and come up with a game plan. And let's just hope that doesn't happen. And we ain't got to talk about that any too much farther because we don't want to get anybody hurt.
Fingers crossed, man. I'm pulling for those guys. I know it's a big night. It's two big nights, and I'd like to see it go off without a hitch. And it certainly did back in 2009. WrestleMania 25 is our topic. At this point, you had been announcing SmackDown since July of 2008. I think you were working with Taz in this era.
Yeah.
We haven't spent a lot of time talking about you and your partnership with Taz in the WWE. I know you've got to spend a lot of time with him in AEW, but
right.
This was a different Taz. This was a different era. He's sort of transitioning from being an in-ring performer to now being behind the desk and on the cans with you. What was it like working with Taz way back when?
It was fun. You know, he was green. He was new. He was learning as he went, but he's a smart guy. And the thing that Taz had, and he still has it, is the aptitude for explaining the business. He does a real good job at that, in my opinion. But I had a good time working with Taz. You know, he was always on time. He worked hard. He prepared hard. But it was his formative years, to say the very least. But I enjoyed my experience with Taz. Still do when we get an opportunity to work together on AEW, which is very rare. But I'd work with Taz anytime, anywhere. He's really, really good. And he's getting better all the time. That's what happens when you focus and you concentrate on your work and not politics or bullshit. He's a no bullshit guy. And I like that about Taz. So he's a very positive addition to the broadcast team in AEW, and it looks like it will be for a long time to come. At least I hope so.
WWE is going to be going through some changes in this era, not just Taz transitioning from being an in-ring performer to doing commentary, but the company is going to be transitioning to the PG era. That's going to mean no more blood, no more annual Playboy photo shoot crossover. And you can't even call John Cena's finisher no longer the FU. Now it's the attitude adjustment. I understand that, the business is always evolving and changing. But what did you think of the move to PG? It's probably best for business from an advertising standpoint, but did you think it would affect the fans or the ratings or the way they enjoyed wrestling?
Not really. Not really. I thought that whole thing was a little bit overhyped as far as going PG from R to PG. There was still some edgy content. It just wasn't as blatant or coarse as it was in the Attitude Era. So, it's funny that, the Attitude Era influenced so many promotions. And it's just hard to replicate that. Too much blood you're sending good money after bad. It loses its effect a little bit when you have so much of it, because it ceases to be special. When you have blood on a big show once a show, you're probably better off because it keeps it special, and you don't want to just throw away any use of blood. It's got to be special, and it's got to be described and talked about, and how is it affecting the match, et cetera, et cetera. So I didn't have a problem with it, quite frankly. It seemed like it worked okay to me, and I know that the match that I remember most fondly about that WrestleMania 25 was Taker and Shawn, and they didn't do anything too drastic. They just had one of the best matches in the history of WrestleMania, or WWE, in my opinion. It was a tremendous performance by both guys, and I always felt very honored to be able to be on that broadcast team for that match.
I can't wait for us to talk about WrestleMania 24. But before we get there, I wanted to ask you about the movie The Wrestler. I don't think we've spent any time talking about this, but this Mickey Rourke movie was getting a lot of buzz. A lot of people are saying it's the best wrestling movie of all time. It grossed $44 million. It only cost $6 million to make. And it actually won Mickey a Golden Globe for Best Actor. But the critics loved it. I don't know how many people inside of wrestling loved it. What did you think of the movie?
I thought it was entertaining. I watched it a couple of times. Mickey Rourke is not the easiest guy to get along with. I know. Is that the one where he had Frank Shamrock and somebody else there with him to make sure no funny business is going to take place?
That's this WrestleMania. Yes.
Yeah. So that was unnecessary because nobody was going to jack him around.
No.
But he just had a little paranoia that existed there. But he did a hell of a job in the movie. There's no doubt about that. His look, mannerisms, the whole 9 yards, spot on. So I don't know what the company thought about it. To me, having a major motion picture that was an award winner gets so much publicity is good for wrestling.
No doubt about that.
What's that?
No doubt about it. I mean, it got a little more attention to wrestling. It got people talking about it. And I know a lot of people in the wrestling biz didn't actually love the presentation and felt like maybe it looked down on the profession of professional wrestling. But I, as a fan, could just watch it and enjoy it and not think about all that. And I'm glad to hear you were able to as well.
Yeah, it was a fun watch. I even watched it again the other day. I saw it someplace, and it's one of those movies where I have a handful of movies I like to watch that I will watch again. Pretty much anything by John Wayne, things like that. I'm a mark for. But I thought that the wrestler was well done. Hey, look, all they did was tell the truth.
Right.
I mean, I think we can say what we want about, well, it was a hatchet job or it wasn't good for wrestling, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know that to be fact. I don't think it hurt wrestling at all. It created an awareness for the genre and showed a realistic look at what how some wrestlers experienced their profession. It was interesting and how that worked out. But Mickey Rourke character reminded me of a lot of guys that that had issues and ended up being broke. One of the most poignant scenes to me was the autograph session where Mickey, the character, was sitting at a little card table, coffee table, whatever, and nobody was there. He was sitting there by himself, which is a hell of a feeling. I got some appearances coming up, and God forbid that we don't have anybody show. that would not be good. So, but I didn't have a problem with it. I thought it was I looked at it for what it was. It was a fictional account of a wrestler story based in fact. And some people can't handle facts.
Right.
So, but I thought they did a nice job.
Let's talk about where we are in WWE. Randy Orton wins the 2009 Royal Rumble by eliminating Triple H. And on the Raw before the Rumble, that's when Orton memorably punted Vince McMahon in the head. So that sort of charts the course a little bit for WrestleMania. And around every WrestleMania, even back then, there was a whisper, is Stone Cold going to be doing something at Mania? And Dave Meltzer wrote, Austin is still at this point scheduled to wrestle a farewell match at Mania. There's a lot of politicking going around regarding the match, but Austin won't be working with Hogan. Orton is in play with the obvious angle, but it doesn't appear to be a lock. Months ago, I heard the idea internally was Rock versus Austin as a 25th anniversary special match, but never thought anything was maybe just the most remote of possibilities. Every year it feels like people are wondering and speculating, will Stone Cold be at WrestleMania? They're even saying it this year. When you think about, your relationship with Steve, did you think there was a chance that he could be doing something in a major way at WrestleMania 25?
Always the chance, Connie, but not likely. He just, the flame was lessening. And Steve, as we've discussed here, was always very particular with who he worked with. And, because he wanted the best match he could create. But I never thought he was, if there was some hot heel that he had not worked with that Steve wanted to work with, then I could see it. But that wasn't the case in this scenario. So, and you're right. People ask about it every year.
Yes.
Is Austin going to come back and wrestle at WrestleMania? I don't think it's going to happen this year. I don't know if we'll even see Steve at WrestleMania. I don't know. What do you think? You think he'll be at WrestleMania in some shape, form, or fashion? I
do. I think he'll be in Philadelphia. I think we'll hear the glass break, and I think it'll happen on Sunday night.
Huh.
Just a guess. Yeah. I don't know. But when I was watching the Cody Rock beatdown in the parking lot a few weeks ago in Chicago, there was a tractor trailer truck there in the background. It only had two faces on it during that scene, John Cena and Steve Austin. That didn't feel accidental. Felt like an Easter egg. So
interesting. Yeah, that's a good guess. You never know.
Do you think there was, we know that Stone Cold would come back, and I don't really count the little skirmish that he had with the League of Nations or whatever it was called. But we know he had one last match with Kevin Owens. And I was kind of thinking it would have happened before then as well. Do you think Vince or the WWE rather just never pitched the right opponent, or was Steve just probably going to say no matter what?
I don't, pardon me. I don't think, pardon me again. I don't think that he was going to say no just to be contrarian.
Right.
Again, he's very particular with who he works with. He has a legacy and a standard of his WrestleMania matches that he wanted to continue. And, you know, I don't know. I just don't think it was meant to be. If some, like I said earlier, if there was a new hot heel that Steve had not worked with, that was athletic and safe, then I could see him working. And now he's kind of, I won't say relegated, but now it seems like he's looking at doing a cameo business at best. But who knows? I'm not going to say he's not going to be at WrestleMania because I don't have a clue.
Right.
I don't have a clue. And the irony is that when Steve and I talk, which is not as regular as we both would like, we rarely talk about the specifics of booking and matches and things of that nature. We got so many other things that our friendship is based on that we discuss. And of course, during football season, there was a lot of football talk.
Oh yeah.
He's a big football fan, as am I. And, you know, I took him to an OU game and spent the weekend at my house in Norman once upon a time, had a great time. And he had a great time. You got to be normal. And we enjoyed each other's company. And of course, we enjoyed Jan's cooking because he hadn't got much home cooking being on the road like he was. So, but he's a different cat. He's a different guy. Just to be on the card is not sufficient. That's not Steve. Just to be on the card, because obviously he did not need the money. He was making great money. He was saving great money. So I don't know. I think he's just not the average guy. You know, a lot of guys would give their left testicle to be on the WrestleMania card. That ain't him. Now, maybe when he was younger and he was just getting started on his WrestleMania journeys, maybe so. But that's not the case at this point in time.
You wrote at the time, way back when in 2009, that you had been in regular contact with Dwayne Johnson and you didn't believe he would ever wrestle again. Now, we know he didn't. Well, he didn't wrestle a ton after that. I mean, a handful of matches for sure. But it's interesting that every WrestleMania season, though, people start to speculate, is this guy coming back? Is that guy coming back? And it always feels like it comes back to Austin and Rock. And now here we are, and people are still speculating about Austin. And we know The Rock is in the ring. You know, we talked about Mickey Rourke earlier. We just mentioned the movie, but once upon a time, I think the original idea was that he might actually wrestle a match against Chris Jericho. And I think they even sort of hinted around that during a Larry King appearance, but it went sideways and it wound up not happening. Of course, Rourke was there ringside, but not an in-ring participant. Do you know why that didn't happen? Did you have any interaction with Mickey to get a feel for why he didn't want to move forward with an in-ring match?
One word: trust.
Okay.
I don't think Mickey trusted the system, and he didn't want to look bad. And, you know, if you're going to work with Jericho, you got to have your boots laced up and tight. And I just don't think he had the confidence that Mickey could pull it off. So I just think there's trust. He didn't want to get hurt. And to me, that's the end game. He didn't want to get hurt. He was uncertain of the surroundings. He had never been in that arena before. It wasn't a scenario where you could do retakes and let's come back tomorrow and finish this type thing. So he was just a paranoid kind of guy. I didn't I didn't hate being around him because I wasn't around him that much at ringside, hanging out, things like that. But he just seemed to be apprehensive and untrusting. So I think trust is the biggest word there. Could he do all these stunts and take some flat back bumps and not get hurt? He thought no. That's why he didn't do it.
Let's talk about Chris Jericho. He's going to make some international headline news here when he has a bit of an incident outside of a building in Canada. I think the fans are going to attack him. He's going to start pushing back and forth. I guess there was a lady somewhere lost in the shuffle here. I know at this point you're not necessarily running talent relations, but I know you're in the office. I know that, you've been friends with Chris for a long, long time. What do you make of this news when it comes out that, man, he was in a bad spot here?
Yeah, he kind of dodged a bullet. He in my opinion, but it might have been a case of making too much out of not enough. Nobody got hurt. I can recall, at least not significantly, maybe bruised or scared. But Chris is not a troublemaker. He doesn't go out of his way to create controversy. He's good enough at creating controversy within the confines of his character. He's brilliant at it, as a matter of fact. So I always trusted Chris's judgment and things like that. And I think that was kind of the company's feeling. He was a reliable guy. And we've talked before here about no matter what your job is or your vocation, are you reliable? That's the number one thing I always look for when I sign a guy, the reliability factor. Chris had he was reliable.
Let's talk about Triple H. You sit down with him on SmackDown. It's the February 20th, 2009 episode. And in this sit down interview is really the first time it's revealed that Vince McMahon is his father and Stephanie is his wife and the mother of his children. And Vince is 63 years old. And this is a peeling back of the curtain that hasn't been publicly acknowledged a lot. I mean, there have been, storyline circumstances and all that where we would sort of give a wink and a nod, but this is the first time it feels like we're just talking about it. It was probably time, don't you think?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Maybe past time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought it was very timely and it seemed like it worked out, made the story more real, added another layer to the storytelling. 63-year-old father-in-law, being the most powerful man in the entire industry, forever and all time. So I thought it was very timely and it worked out well.
Let's mention too that at No Way Out, Triple H is going to win the SmackDown Elimination Chamber to win the WWE title, and Edge is going to win the Raw Chamber later on in the night to win the World title. So we got a little title shuffle here. When we get to Raw of February 23rd, that's where it's announced that Steamboat is going to be going into the WWE Hall of Fame.
Yeah, no brainer.
Jericho comes out and notes that Rourke lost the Oscar and is now just a loser, like Flair, Piper, and Steamboat. And of course, we're trying to set up the match here. I can't believe this is a thing that really happened, but it sure was fun to watch. Steamboat going to be wrestling at WrestleMania and working with Chris Jericho. That was pretty cool to see them set the story up. Were you surprised to see Steamboat coming back for one last dance?
Not really. It's hard to get that stuff out of your system. And Ricky stays in great shape, even to this very day. He can have a match with anybody, as they say, and he can, and it could. But I like the marriage between Jericho and Steamboat. They seem to fit each other. They seem to be on the same page. And so I enjoyed that story as it was told somewhat succinctly. It may have been rushed a little bit, but in any event, I thought that it did good. Chris looks good in a suit. Steamboat was there in a special night. So it was a great opportunity for Jericho to put on his heel face and go have a match with one of the greatest baby faces that ever lived. And they did that. They did a nice job.
Steamboat cut a hell of a promo that night too. Maybe one of the best of his career, according to Dave Meltzer. Randy Orton is putting together a little bit of a feud. Of course, he's got a couple of guys in his stable. It's called Legacy. Those two fellows, Ted DiBiase and some cat named Cody Rhodes. They're the heaters of this Legacy group. What do you think of Legacy as a group?
I liked them. I thought it was the opportunity to advance young talents that had a pedigree and had the DNA you're looking for. But that's a good picture there as you're watching on YouTube of Cody, Randy, and Mr. Orton. So I liked them. I thought I thought that whole deal had legs.
We're going to see John Cena make a rare SmackDown appearance on February 27th. It's his first time on SmackDown in like 2 years at this point. We would also see Kozlov pin Undertaker clean. Meltzer would say he was told the match was terrible. They're going to have to edit to clean it up. Quote, the editors did a hell of a job because it came across as decent other than a snake eye spot, which at this point Undertaker should just give up on because Kozlov didn't go up well for it. The finish was Undertaker doing his old school rope walk and Kozlov pulled him off into a power slam for the clean pin. This is a big deal for the Undertaker to be losing clean on TV like this. We know it didn't really work with Kozlov. Who was so high on him and why didn't it work?
Well, Vince liked him, and Vince convinced the Undertaker to like him a little bit more too. I didn't like that booking. It didn't, it didn't flip the switch for me. I thought Kozlov wasn't ready and fundamentally wasn't ready. And, I understand the theory, but it didn't click with me. It just didn't click with me. And Undertaker getting beat by Kozlov was a huge favor to Kozlov, and it let Vince flex his biceps that I'm still in control and still in charge. So, but losing to Taker was unnecessary. It didn't need it, but they did it anyway.
They did it anyway. And they're also going to do Matt Hardy versus Jeff Hardy. We're setting that up here. I know that the brother versus brother storyline is a classic. I mean, we saw it with Owen and Brett, and we're seeing it this weekend with Jimmy and Jay. But for me, I never really liked Matt versus Jeff. I prefer them as a tag team. What'd you think?
Same. I didn't like the brother. This was unrealistic to me. It took too much explaining. And it wasn't a simple, straightforward presentation, but that didn't move the needle for me either. I thought, I'm a big Hardy Boys fan. You got to sign them both when they're still making their own gear, wrestling gear. They using their mom's sewing machine to sew their wrestling gear. I always admired that, and. But the match itself, I'm with you, Conrad. I would have rather seen them in a tag. That's what their legacy was built on. And that was the best presentation, I thought, of the Hardys when they were in tag matches.
The next Monday Night Raw opens up with Piper's Pit stage and Piper's music, but it's Jericho who comes out instead. And he's going to show a clip of Piper's Pit from '84 with Jimmy Snuka. And then he calls out Snuka, and he's going to compare Snuka to Randy the Ram, saying, here you are in your mid-60s, still doing independent shows in New Jersey, and you should just retire, and you clearly have no dignity. So Snuka being involved here, clearly it's going to build to Ray. What do you think of bringing Snuka back and doing a little Piper's Pit with Chris Jericho?
Well, it was realistic. It followed a storyline. It was good that WWE had access to Jimmy. Fans like seeing him. He had a great legacy there, and then Jericho used that opportunity as a heel to get heat and beat up the babyface. Pretty simple wrestling 101 at that point in time. You knew something was going to happen. So, but Jericho did a nice job of taking advantage of the opportunity to be a heel.
Right after we see Kozlov pick up a win over The Undertaker on SmackDown, he's going to be wrestling Shawn Michaels on Raw, and Shawn Michaels beats him to earn a match with The Undertaker at WrestleMania. These two guys have never faced at WrestleMania, Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker, That's kind of surprising in and of itself after all the shows they've been on together. But maybe just as surprising, Kozlov beats the Undertaker clean and then turns around and loses to Shawn Michaels. Maybe the bloom was off the rose once they realized they had to edit so much. What do you say?
Yeah. Oh yeah, maybe. Somebody changed their mind on Kozlov over the weekend type scenario. And it may have come, that feedback may have come from Taker, who was, I'm sure, disappointed in the performance that the match delivered. So, but Kozlov had his cup of coffee. He got that major win that actually went nowhere. So it's just unfortunate that happened in that regard. He was given a chance to get over, but I think the reason he didn't beat the reason that Kozlov did not beat Shawn is that Vince had seen enough of Kozlov.
Let's also mention that Hulk Hogan keeps it stirred up here in mid-March. He tweets out, "Hey, be sure to watch Monday Night Raw," almost hinting that there's going to be something big happen there. And of course, it's just Hulk being Hulk. And Meltzer would say, even though WrestleMania seems to be lacking a spark right now, it's been noted the economic signs are good. While not sold out, the live gate is already about $5.8 million with 1 month to go. So by the time this is read, it'll likely have broken the Orlando record from last year for the biggest gate in wrestling history. In addition, the Hall of Fame is very close to being sold out and well ahead of the pace last year for a show built around Ric Flair and the return of The Rock. Ratings are also consistently strongest they've been in 2 years. Man, it feels like everything, fans are almost Pavlovian and conditioned. Everybody starts paying more attention around WrestleMania, do they not?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh, it's the biggest thing of the year. It's no different than the NFL and the Super Bowl or the March Madness, the Final Four. They're destination events. WrestleMania has always been and always will be a destination event. One that if you're a performer, you want to be on the card. If you're a fan, you want to make sure you don't miss the show. So, I understand, that Kozlov thing was just a fly in the ointment. It was a bump in the road that shouldn't have even been a bump. It should have been smooth sailing, but it got us to Shawn and Taker, which was the real bonus, if you will, of that whole scenario, because they went out and had a classic. I don't remember calling a match at WrestleMania that I enjoyed more than calling with my partners, calling Taker and Shawn. They had a clinic, and if you're a fan of the business and you're going to watch one match off this pay-per-view,
oh yeah,
that's the one to check out. And if you're a wrestler and you want just a little tutorial, this is the one to watch. You can learn an awful lot. When you got a 200-pound babyface who's arguably the best ever, and Shawn Michaels, and then you got Undertaker, who was a near 7-foot babyface, but they made it work, and they told a great story, just a tremendous story. And every time you thought, well, that was the peak, they can't top that, they did.
Well, there's going to be a ratings record set for SmackDown with my network. It's the return of John Cena that we plugged earlier. When the ratings come out for this, it does a 2.32. The audience was 3.996 million households. I mean, that's wild. And it's a stark contrast from where we are today. And of course, just technology's changed and the way people consume media has changed, all that. And there's some changes in this era for Marty Wright. We know him as the Boogeyman, and he's going to get released on March 4th. Meltzer would say, I was surprised he lasted this long. The deal is he did have a unique gimmick that was effective a few years back on SmackDown because he was so different from everyone else, but it wasn't a gimmick that had legs. Hard to disagree with that. What can you tell us about the real life Marty Wright, and what did you think of the Boogeyman presentation?
Marty was a very quiet, polite guy, very reserved, well liked. He did have a unique gimmick that maybe only he could execute, and that's not a bad thing. So, but I like Marty. He's a nice guy. I wouldn't create the gimmick. To me, was an attraction gimmick. It was one of those deals where you could put him in the same kettle of fish of an Andre or Big Show. Special attractions. Seeing less and not more was the way to go with the Boogeyman character, in my opinion. So, but it was a very bold gimmick, and he was asked to do the worms and all those things. Not a lot of guys would go for that, but Marty was looking for work and looking to make some paydays from what had been a very tepid career to that point. But he's a nice guy. He lived his gimmick. He was just but it was not a gimmick that had long legs. Simple as that.
Let's talk about JBL. It's mentioned here in the Observer in mid-March that at 42 years old, he's thinking about perhaps retiring. He's got some bad back problems, and it ended his career the first time in 2006. And now here he is having more back problems. He'd love to stay in the WWE forever, but man, he's hurting for certain. What can you tell us about JBL as he starts to think about winding it down here in 2009?
Well, those back problems are just a fait accompli. And you go through you wonder how come that generation of guys is having so many back problems. It's because, in my opinion, taking unnecessary risk and working in bad rings. And John was a tough guy, and he liked making money. Nothing wrong with either of those observations, but he was, but he had to make some choices, and his back was problematic. It was going to remain problematic until he gave it some rest or had surgery. So, but if JBL said he was hurt, he's damn sure was hurt. He's a tough guy. Loved the opportunity finally to be on top and make that top money. And that's a great motivator for anybody.
Let's talk about SmackDown on March 6th, because the show opens with The Undertaker cutting a promo, and it's different than the way we've heard The Undertaker in quite a while. Meltzer had this to say. Show opened with Undertaker coming out and cutting a serious non-zombie promo about Michaels and WrestleMania. I'm told that Bruce Pritchard was the guy who always insisted on a supernatural base to the Undertaker promos, and with him gone, things have changed. They showed a WrestleMania video package for Shawn Michaels, which was quite great, and The Undertaker said many men had tried to make their name at his expense at previous WrestleManias. All had fallen, and Shawn would be no different. He told Shawn he'd better start praying. I like the promo, but it is a departure from what we had been seeing from The Undertaker for most of his career. What do you think of this assessment that was a Bruce thing, that the Undertaker character needed to be more rooted in supernatural, if you will?
I thought there had to be a happy medium there someplace. Bruce was always a big proponent of the supernatural stuff. I liked it up to a certain point. When it got to an eyebrow raising or eyeball rolling scenario, then you lose me on that one. But I thought it made Undertaker more real, more human. And I didn't see anything wrong with that. If you're strictly hanging your hat and living and dying on the supernatural, it would not be your cup of tea. But no matter how you want to frame the presentation, the match delivered in an amazing way, no matter what. It's just absolutely tremendous.
On Monday Night Raw, we would see the Triple H versus DiBiase Cody Rhodes match not really happen because they're playing his music over and over and there's no Triple H. We cut to Randy Orton's house where he's supposedly watching the show and he's talking trash about Triple H, and all of a sudden someone knocks at the door and he tells quote unquote Samantha to go answer the door. And by then we figure out it's Triple H. He's at Randy Orton's house with a sledgehammer. He's going to terrorize the house and chase him around. I mean, it feels like a movie. Every now and again, we see stuff like this in wrestling and it really works. Other times we sort of roll our eyes, like you alluded to. You see Randy getting thrown through the front window of his house there. What did you think of this? Was this good or was this maybe a stretch?
It might have been a little bit of a stretch. I thought that it reminded me of Austin. His attack on the Brian Pillman home back in the day.
Yes,
Kind of similar scenario, but I didn't hate the idea. It was a little bit close to what we'd already seen.
Yes,
and it married those two guys together very well. I mean, they had great chemistry, and I was looking forward to that match. I thought that it had the potential to be really, really outstanding, and it was. But it was well done. For Randy to go to St. Louis and do the damage to Randy's home and scare his family and so forth. It showed how serious Triple H was about this whole scenario, and it built more anticipation for their upcoming match. So it was well done in that regard. But I just thought in general, it was a little bit too close to Austin and Pillman.
We do see eventually the difference being between the two. The police are going to carry Triple H away. So that's pretty, it's a pretty cool angle. I know it got a lot of people talking, but I agree with you. It doesn't feel as iconic to me as the first time we saw it with Pillman and Austin. Let's talk a little bit about some sad news. Andrew Martin, who we knew as Test, is going to pass away on March 12th, 2009. He's only 33 years old. It's just 5 days before his 34th birthday. He had such a great look, and it looked like his future was going to be really, really bright with the WWE. Clearly addiction got the better of him. What can you tell us about the real life Andrew Martin?
He couldn't whip his biggest opponent. Drug addiction. Couldn't win. He didn't win. And it killed him. That's about as abrupt of ending as you could ask for. I must tell you that when I heard that he had passed away, I wasn't shocked, because he according to the talents, he became very dependent on painkillers, muscle relaxers, downers in general. And that stuff, the boys forget that shit's a depressant. So if you have depression issues and you're in the pill bottle too much, you're digging your own grave. And so I felt bad about that. Andrew got swept up in the hype, and he was living his dream, but it was just sad. It became a nightmare. It wasn't a dream anymore. So I felt bad about that. We never tapped into what he really could have done. I mean, he could have been a bigger star than most people ever dreamed he could have become, but we never got to see that. It ended too quickly.
Let's talk about Raw as we get closer to WrestleMania. The show's going to open with Ric Flair in the ring and Jericho walking through the backstage doing a tremendous promo. Jericho's going to come to the ring. He's running down Flair. Flair's doing his usual stuff, and he starts making this comeback. Flair punches him out of nowhere. Flair juices right away from a hard way to the eye. You could see Flair checking to see if the punch got the job done. And even though blading is prohibited and you aren't supposed to bleed, there was no question that they set out to bleed. Jericho kept on him, tearing his shirt up. He hit Flair with the TV monitor, opened up a second cut in the back of Flair's head. Flair needed 11 staples after the show to close the second cut. It was kind of illogical at certain points because it went so long and nobody was there to make the save. Also, they were brawling right in front of Lawler. And Lawler has a pet peeve that when a babyface is getting destroyed right in front of him, he thinks it makes him look stupid to just stand there and do nothing. What'd you think of this angle and the blood? And my goodness, 11 staples.
That's a lot. I had 28 staples in my hip, Conrad, just keeping a score here at home.
Wow.
I didn't even know I had staples in my hip. I had poor communication with my surgeon, which he and I thoroughly discussed face to face this past Monday. So this is not how you run a medical practice. And I've never been a doctor, or have I ever played one on television, but goddamn, you think you'd at least tell me I had staples in my hip. So in any event, that's water under the bridge. I would have said Lawler had legitimate argument because he was a babyface, a beloved babyface, and he did nothing to try to intervene. And I thought that was wrong. And I know Jerry was very uncomfortable with that over the years. But there you go. He's a babyface. He's out there. He's got to work around it as best he can. But I probably, in hindsight, Lawler would have got out of his chair. He'd gone over to try to intervene and break up the situation. And that's where the cheap shot would have come from Jericho. Lawler down selling. He's already done the damage to Flair, and you move on. But that never happened. But in hindsight, it would not have been a bad idea.
We should talk about the main event here. It's supposed
Can you imagine how many dollars Flair's, sorry, Conrad, I just popped in my head, that torn shirt. If Flair didn't wear cheap shirts.
Right.
I wonder how much money he's invested over the years in his attire that got destroyed in an angle. Got to be thousands of dollars. Maybe
most famously that yellow robe that Blackjack tore up in Crockett way back when, or Mid-Atlantic way back when. I mean, that was, he would say, still to this day, it was his favorite robe ever. And it was about the robe and the hat. And there was a huge feud that was discussed at length. If you want to catch up more about it, if this isn't familiar to you, at midatlanticgateway.com, our buddy Dick Bourne broke it down. Pretty classic angle, but I mean, I think even back then those robes were several $1,000s.
Yeah.
And that's before he was, making the really big money that he would make later in his career. So yeah, I'm with you. It's gotta be tens of thousands of dollars in torn wardrobes over the years.
Lots of money, but nobody can ever blame Nate for not going the entire distance to make an angle work.
No doubt about that.
So he did. And it wasn't cheap.
Well, I'll tell you what else goes the distance, and that's our friends at Manscaped. This episode is brought to you by Manscaped. And did you know one man every hour, every day is diagnosed with testicular cancer? In fact, testicular cancer is the most common form of cancer amongst men 15 to 35. With April being National Testicular Cancer Awareness Month, our friends over at Manscaped have partnered with the Testicular Cancer Society to help spread awareness for men's health and early cancer detection. We want to encourage you right now to visit manscaped.com/TCS to learn how to check yourself for early signs of cancer. And as always, you can use our promo code Jim Ross for 20% off plus free shipping at manscaped.com. I want to take just a second here to talk about men's health issues that are important to both myself and Jim Ross. I mean, we've been covering and chronicling all of JR's health challenges on the program for what seems like years at this point. And with this in mind, you can perform simple routine self-checks at home while enjoying Manscaped products you use every day. Of course, we're talking about products like the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra. It makes sense, right? We use products daily to trim and maintain our boys down there. The Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra features 2 interchangeable skin-safe blade heads, a standard one to take a little off the top, and now a new foil blade to go smooth and sleek. We've got dual LED spotlights, so you'll get better visibility, making every trim more precise and hassle-free. Maybe you don't like making a mess. Well, let me just tell you, this is waterproof. That's right. The Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra, you can use in the shower, in the bath, hell, even in the ocean. And you can bring this trimmer wherever you go thanks to its wireless charging capabilities and the travel lock feature. In addition to providing the right tools and solutions for comfortable and easy grooming, Manscaped is committed to raising awareness and giving support for fighters, survivors, and families impacted by testicular cancer. That's why they'll be donating $50,000 to the Testicular Cancer Society. Help them save lives and balls by going over to manscaped.com/TCS and sharing their funny, educational, check yourself video. And while you're at it, grab 20% off plus free shipping with the code Jim Ross, because like a famous American philosopher once said, take care of your mentals, your balls, and your chickens.
That's great. That's a good one, Connie. You should be writing country songs.
Oh, goodness gracious. Hey, serious business guys, this is a great cause. I want you to really help us out here and support Manscaped. not only because they support our show, but because they're bringing awareness to testicular cancer, and they're donating $50,000. So they're really going to help a lot of folks here. And we hope that you'll help us and Manscaped continue that mission. Do us a favor. If you don't mind, go right now to manscaped.com/TCS. While you're there, take a look, see if there's anything that tickles your fancy. I think there will be. And be sure to use our promo code Jim Ross. It means a lot. You'll get 20% off and free shipping, but it keeps shows like ours on the air. So please go right now, manscaped.com/TCS. Learn more about what they're doing for the Testicular Cancer Society. And while you're there, get a great deal and save yourself some cash with our promo code Jim Ross.
Good deal. Great product. They've been with us since day one. We can't thank Manscaped enough. And they just have great products. They know what they're doing. So give them a shot. And like Conrad said, there's no better cause than now to contribute to testicular cancer and all the issues that creates. So give it a shot. Give it a shot. You're gonna enjoy the products, and you're gonna feel even better about helping a great cause.
Let's talk about one of the biggest angles that we get in this era. It's going to be Triple H versus Orton and DiBiase in a handicap match. The idea here is it's supposed to be Triple H and Randy Orton in an actual match this close to Mania. And maybe that sounds a little stupid because they're building, but as you might imagine, it becomes a beatdown. It's a beatdown with legacy, Orton, DiBiase, and Rhodes. Rhodes is going to come out from under the ring when Triple H was trying to get the sledgehammer that he'd hidden there. And that's when they handcuff Triple H to the ropes and start pounding on him. And Orton starts teasing, hitting Triple H with the sledgehammer and says the only way he won't is if Stephanie comes out. Well, she does. And all three members of Legacy surround her. She's trying to escape. Orton's going to hook her for a DDT. And they're teasing everything for so long. The announcers are laying out. Everything's building up bigger and bigger. Triple H is screaming for Orton not to do it. He's handcuffed to the top ropes. And of course, Randy does it. It's a DDT, and Triple H starts crying at first. Then Orton grabs the sledgehammer, teases hitting Stephanie with the sledgehammer, but instead bends her over and kisses her. And he nails Triple H with the sledgehammer, and the show ends with them going to the back. Triple H recovered from the sledgehammer shot. But man, this has got this angle on fire. It becomes the most watched video that WWE ever put on YouTube, even to this day. So it clearly got people interested. What do you think of the execution of this?
I think that it proved once again that Stephanie was an amazing talent. Great heel, natural instincts. I noticed that it was one of the pictures that we showed that Will Raymond showed us right there. That's facial expression. She's telling an amazing story. She's concerned. She's scared. She's worried. Just tremendous.
Yes.
She was very, very, very gifted. And she contributed amazingly to this angle because she was the scorned woman that was at risk, and good stuff. It's good stuff. So she did a great job. Triple H did too. Triple H and Randy had great chemistry, and Randy was kind of Triple H's hand-picked opponent, which is a good decision. And but Stephanie really added amazingly. I don't know another female that I've ever worked with that had her natural heel instincts and her facial expressions and all those type things. She just was very, very special and added immensely to this presentation.
There's a lot of hype here. This big angle we get on the final Raw, March 30th, is the return of Vince and Shane McMahon at the end of the show, who along with Triple H are going to end the show with a brawl with Randy Orton, Ted DiBiase, and Cody Rhodes. I mean, you've got things at a fever pitch, and it's clearly working. And as a reminder, this is 1 year after we had Flair's retirement match. We had Floyd Mayweather at WrestleMania. I mean, you're following a big WrestleMania here. Did you feel like 25 was going to be able to surpass what 24 was?
It's going to be challenging, but yeah, I thought it had a chance to do it. Thought it had a chance to do it because of Orton and Triple H's situation, Undertaker and Shawn. Those are two great main events, just two terrific main events. So I thought because of those two, if nothing else, that WrestleMania 25 had a chance to be in the same hunt, same conversation that WrestleMania 24 was in.
I just think it's interesting that we got John Cena on the show here, and he's in a 3-way with Edge and Big Show. And Meltzer would say that there's an emotional disconnect because no one is able to suspend their disbelief to believe that Big Show and Vicky Guerrero are having a secret affair, where maybe we could perhaps buy into Edge and Vicky, and most of us did. It just didn't click for Big Show and Vicky. And Meltzer would say, there's probably never been a WrestleMania where the legitimate top guy in the company has been more wasted than John Cena has been in this 3-way with Edge and Big Show. What do you make of that? I mean, that's kind of hard to argue, I suppose. I mean, we probably wouldn't have done this with Austin or Hogan, right?
No, not at all. Cena's just a different cat. Cena's just such a team player. He was willing to go along with it for the betterment of the company and trusting Vince's judgment that triple threat match was what you should do. I've always felt that more often than not, those multiple person matches like the triple threat match was a little bit of lazy booking. Just a way to get it. The theory is it gets more people on the card. That doesn't make the card better. So at least it doesn't in my opinion. But it was a great use of John, no doubt. But he's just a team player. He went along with it.
With all this that's going on, I got to bring up Taz finishing up with the company. He's going to be done when his contract expires on March 31st. Meltzer would say his leaving was not unexpected, as the feeling was he would be done shortly after WrestleMania, but he did leave on his own terms, which Vince McMahon is not fond of. McMahon and Taz had a meeting at TV on March 30th in Dallas, and they were amicable to each other. Publicly, the word is that Taz was burned out and wanted to take time off. While wrestlers are allowed leave of absences, announcers are not. And there's a rule of thumb among announcers that you don't, under any circumstances, miss a show, which explains why Jim Ross worked the March 17th tapings in Corpus Christi while suffering from pneumonia. And while Mike Tenay worked the TNA tapings last year with a bad elbow infection that he should have avoided traveling on. So, Jim, is that the way you remember it? Announcers just weren't really announced to miss any dates at all?
Pretty much. Yeah, pretty much. I don't know if that was official, but it's pretty much the fact. A lot of us announcers are so paranoid and insecure that we didn't want to be taken out of the lineup.
Right.
Taz was just tired. He was just tired. He was the politics of the position did not suit him well. I thought it was a loss for us because he was starting to get pretty good. And as we see now on AEW, he's that was his calling. Taz was a product of Paul Heyman's and ECW, and they did an amazing job in building that character. And Taz did an amazing job of executing it. But his true calling seemed to be after he had neck issues and so forth. But being a broadcaster was I thought a good fit for Pete. Good guy. And he's very well respected in the confines of AEW for sure. To this day, it does a good job on Dynamite and other broadcasts. So anyway, I hated to see him go. I thought he was did a great job, and it also spoke to if he leaves, who's taking his spot. And that was something that had me concerned because I got to work with that person, whomever it may be. And we would soon find out.
Were you surprised to see him leave before WrestleMania? I mean, I know this sounds silly, but I know the contract was up March 31st, but we're less than a week away from WrestleMania. It does feel like most folks would say, "Hey, let me see if I can hang around and get one more Mania payday and be a part of one more big show." Taz didn't do that. Was that a surprise to you?
A little bit. I thought it was not the best strategy for Taz, but that's how he felt. He was very, he's a very, like some of us are not unlike some of us, very hard headed, very stubborn at times. So, yeah, it was, I tried to talk him out of that deal. You know, you ought to stay until WrestleMania, then make your departure. But he wasn't interested in that suggestion. So his mind was made up and he wasn't going to change it for anybody.
Let me ask you, do you think Taz's issues, I know you said he was burnt out, he was tired. Was he tired of being produced in the headset? Was he tired of, Vince McMahon being in his ear? I mean, we heard that story from Mick Foley, or was it something else? Was it the travel or a combination of things, do you think?
I think it was just the overall, how he was produced and how much hands-on the guy on the other end of the headset had, meaning Vince. So, yeah, it was, I just think the system didn't do Taz any favors. He didn't like to have that much control, and none of us did. I've said that many times on these shows. It was challenging to work with Vince producing because he was so dominant, and he stifled your creativity at times. And I think that's what, in a nutshell, that might have been the largest reason for Taz wanting to get the hell out.
Well, we're finally here. It's WrestleMania weekend. And of course, we can't do a WrestleMania weekend without a big Hall of Fame induction. Let's talk about the Hall of Fame ceremony. We would see Dory Funk Jr. and Terry Funk inducted by Dusty Rhodes. Boy, talk about some legends here. I mean, it's pretty wild, I'm sure, for fans of the NWA and old school wrestling to see these three guys at a WWE show and Dusty Rhodes induct the Funks. I mean, Dusty and Terry had just a legendary feud. It had to be, had to make you feel good to see those guys again together.
Yeah, they got their moment. They got some flowers, well deserved. The only thing I would say on that scenario, from a negative point of view, is that I wish Dusty had been given more time, as well as the Funks, to say their piece.
Yes,
that would have been even better for me. But I'm a old school fan, and I know what the Funks and Dusty meant to the business in general. Huge. They meant everything at one point in time. So I'm happy. I mean, nobody deserved getting in more than the Funks. God Almighty. Look at the notes. You think they ever read them? But I wish they had more time and tell their story. But it was cool. I like the Hall of Fame. I'm a big Hall of Fame fan. Since I went in, and Lawler and I went in together in 2007. That seemed like that long ago, but it has been a long time. So, but it was good. It was good.
We got Koko B. Ware being inducted by the Honky Tonk Man. And as a guy who grew up as a big fan of that era of the WWF, I liked seeing these guys again. But I do think that a lot of fans sort of pointed to Koko's induction and questioned the validity of the WWE Hall of Fame.
I heard that.
And I wonder, how did you reconcile that? Did you think that was fair when fans started to say, is this a real Hall of Fame if Koko's in, or did you think Koko was worthy?
Well, I don't think he was unworthy. Was he at the top of my list? Probably not. But he'd serviced the business for many, many years. He came from humble beginnings, to say the least. I gave him the nickname Koko B. Ware back in the Mid-South days. And he was a hell of an athlete. Played, I think he played nose guard at a high level in high school in football. So, but I don't judge that stuff, Conrad. I mean, golly, how can any of us say, well, he definitively does not belong in the Hall of Fame? Based on what?
Right.
Your extensive research, your hours of thinking about it. Come on. Let the guy have his moment. And so I thought on that topic, much was made of that it was undeserved. But there was talk about some of the guys that they didn't think Koko was deserving. But he was a man of color that contributed greatly in the business. And so I don't know. I just don't have a big issue with that stuff. I really don't. I let them have their moment, let them have their fun, and let them have their memories. Let them keep them in a positive way.
What about the Von Erichs? They get inducted by Michael Hayes. There was speculation at the time that perhaps the Von Erichs went in because WWE made a deal to acquire the world-class tape library. Can't deny their influence on wrestling, though. Bona fide Hall of Famers in the Von Erichs. Did you get to spend any time with Kevin Von Erich? Yeah,
absolutely. I've known those guys since they were kids, literally. But they were very well deserving. This thing had kind of a regional feel, this Hall of Fame class. The Funks, Texans, Austin, Texan. Cowboy was not a Texan by any stretch, but he had worked a lot in that area. He was famous in that area. So I was happy for him. I got the chance to induct him, and that was a very privileged moment for me. It meant something. It still does.
We also see Howard Finkel get inducted by Gene Okerlund. Man, did anybody love this and appreciate this honor more than Howard Finkel?
Oh no. Howard was euphoric, to say the least. I'm surprised he didn't break down and cry. He was very emotional, very, very passionate as a Fink. Nobody loved wrestling more than Howard Finkel. Nobody that I ever been around.
You also got to induct Bill Watts. I know that we talk about him a lot here on the show and what a big influence he was on your life and your career. It was pretty cool to see you be the guy to get to induct him, knowing how important he was in your career. Was this a big deal for Bill? Was he excited about the opportunity, or is he over all this and just another day at the office?
I think he was a half-ass over all of it, Connie. Nice payday comes along, nice honorarium comes along with that induction. It used to be $5,000. I don't know what it was in that time. Probably somewhere in that neighborhood. I think that I don't want to be overly negative, but I'd also be remiss to say that, Cowboy probably thought that the $5,000 was the best part of the Hall of Fame. The cash, all those school guys look at the payday, how much they're getting paid. And so I know when I went in with Lawler, we didn't even talk about how much money we're getting because it wasn't that important. It wasn't life-changing money.
Right.
It was nice money.
Sure.
Nice day and good beer money, so to speak.
Get Jan a nice purse.
Yeah, that's about it, man.
Yeah.
But I was very happy with Cowboy getting recognized, obviously because of how much help he gave me as a mentor and a friend. So it's pretty cool stuff. This is the hell of a Hall of Fame class.
Yeah, we're not done either. We get Ricky Steamboat being inducted by Ric Flair. Who better than the Nature Boy to induct Ricky Steamboat? Of course, Nate was inducted the year prior. And of course, this is one day before what we all thought would be Ricky Steamboat's last match and a WrestleMania match to boot. And then lastly, Stone Cold Steve Austin. He's our headliner. He's going to get inducted by Vince McMahon. And I couldn't help but wonder when I'm thinking about this Hall of Fame back, had Bill Watts not been in this class, I think you could have been the guy to induct Austin, but I'm sure Vince was excited to do it. How do you think Stone Cold felt about going into the WWE Hall of Fame?
Well, I'm sure Steve was happy that the boss was going to induct him, but he'd have been happy if I had done it, because our relationship was a lot closer than Steve and Vince's relationship. But Vince, hey, look, cut to the chase here. Vince wanted to get that rub and be in a position to, exhale, flex his muscles, so to speak. So I think for Vince's ego, that was as much about that as anything else. But certainly, the head of WWE and this operation, inducting Austin, was not a bad thing at all. But egocentrically, I would have loved to have done it.
It's a big moment because we never saw Vince do this. And I know James Dudley was inducted by Vince way back when, but when the Hall of Fame really became the thing it is now, and it was in 2009, Vince not only never inducted anyone, he would instruct people, don't mention me in your speech. He didn't want people thanking him or talking about him. So for him to come out and induct Stone Cold, and I mean, listen, why not? Stone Cold is the reason Vince went from being a millionaire to becoming a billionaire. And my goodness, it was a cool moment for Stone Cold to take his rightful place.
Yeah, it fit. It made sense. Your head man, recognizing your top talent. And so it fit real well. I'm just saying I would like to have done it, not because Vince didn't do a good job, but because my ego says that, JR, you and Austin are very close, closer than anybody else on the roster. You should be the guy inducting him. That's one school of thought. But it just wasn't meant to be on that night. I was very happy to induct Cowboy Bill Watts. But I might have been more happy to induct Stone Cold Steve Austin. Be that as it may, it all got pulled off fine.
And of course, this is a television show. I know that irks a lot of folks, but I mean, that's what it was in this era. So because of that, we're giving people time limits. And you sort of mentioned you wish that Dusty had more time. Well, in the days ahead of the show, each inductee was going to get 10 minutes, and that was cut to 5 minutes. And the presenters were given 3 minutes, and they even ran a clock on the big screen. So the crowd who was there in the arena knew, hey, they're moving this thing along. And the day before the show, a lot of the Hall of Fame class gets together with the WWE writing team. That's right. We got guys like Terry Funk and Bill Watts and Stone Cold, and they're working with WWE scriptwriters. And Meltzer would say Watts appeared to be the only person who chucked his script and ignored the time cues. Even though he was easily the least known to the live crowd there, his speech ended up as a highlight of the show, past the recognition pops for people like Austin, McMahon, Flair, and Steamboat. And Meltzer would say he thinks a lot of this is because the WWE writers were trying to shoehorn in references for WrestleMania. They were just used to writing television, promoting the next PLE. And that's what they were doing here for the talent going in the Hall of Fame. Shout out to your man, Bill, for just saying, screw all that. I'm going to say what I want. What are they going to
do? What are they going to do? Fire me?
Yeah.
He's going to get paid. He's got some TV time. Yeah, I'm with you on that, Conrad. Cowboy came through. Cowboy was a great promo guy back in his wrestling days, and which is evidenced by his performance at the Hall of Fame there in Houston. So he delivered the goods, as we all believed that he would.
Let's also mention that the buys are going to come in for WrestleMania, and boy, it is a monster show. 960,000 buys for WrestleMania 25 here. It is down a little bit from WrestleMania 24, but again, as a reminder, that was Flair's retirement match, and we had Floyd Mayweather, which even if you're just a wrestling fan and not a boxing fan, you at least know Floyd is a pay-per-view juggernaut. So WrestleMania 24 did 1,024,000 buys. So we're down about 64,000 buys, but overall pretty damn strong. Let's talk about some of the matches here. We got Carlito and Primo Colon. They're the tag team champions, and they're going to beat Miz and Morrison. They're the world tag team champions. So we've got unified champs now with Carlito and Primo. They go 8 minutes and 20 seconds. This was moved the day of the show to being a dark match that was taped for DVD. And on the pay-per-view, they never even acknowledged the match had happened. And I found that interesting because it was promoted like it was going to be a pay-per-view match on the show. And then instead it wound up being on the DVD. I guess we're trying to get the DVD sold, and that's a nice little strategy. But if I was a talent, I think I might be disappointed in that.
Yeah. It's not going to affect the thing about that. It's not going to affect their pay.
Right.
Going from a pay-per-view match to what we had, it's not, the money's not going to change. They're going to get paid commensurate with if that's the right word of if they had worked the pay-per-view. So it didn't affect their pocketbook, it didn't affect their wallet, but egocentrically, you're either on the card or you're not. They were not on the card in that context. So it almost became a throwaway.
Let's also mention that there's a lot of lumberjacks involved in this match. I assume this is to just get guys WrestleMania payoffs. Guys like Great Khali, Crime Time, Jamie Noble, Charlie Haas, Hurricane Helms, Gold Dust, Jimmy Wang Yang, Evan Bourne, R-Truth, William Regal, Paul Burchill, Tommy Dreamer, Jack Swagger, Dolph Ziggler, Brian Kendrick, Ezekiel Jackson, Mike Knox, Vladimir Kozlov, Kurt Hawkins, and Zack Ryder. I mean, they're all on the show, kind of. But this, to use one of your old phrases, probably felt like kissing your sister. Yeah,
it was just a way to get some guys a payday. You hit a nail on the head. There's no secret,
right?
Why that was that way, and that's why you look back at WrestleManias over the last several years, you'll find more than one instance as a rule of guys that are on the card that really you scratch your head and wonder why. Well, the why is they work all year. They bust their ass. A lot of those guys are major fans. So being on WrestleMania as a participant in any form was important to them. So, but that's the reason for the Battle Royal, because it meant nothing. It meant absolutely nothing. And that's no disrespect to those talents that you named and you mentioned, because some hellacious workers and performers in that group. But as far as it adding to the card, or maybe a point on Meltzer's ratings and so forth, I don't know. Arguably, if so, not much. But it got guys some work, and it got guys a payday.
So Taz is out. Unbelievably, he says adios, and he's not on this WrestleMania call. So it's going to be a 3-man team here with yourself, Jerry Lawler, and Michael Cole all sitting at one table. Todd Grisham and Matt Stryker are going to be used to call the tag title match on the DVD. Man, this is a fun booth. You know, Jim Ross, Michael Cole, Jerry Lawler, sort of the aces of WWE commentary for decades.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad that we all three got the opportunity to work. It was different. It was a unique scenario, and it's pretty cool shit.
Speaking of pretty cool shit, something that I know you're excited about, BlueChew, it's got to be Jim's favorite sponsor, and they're a day one sponsor, and you'll see why when you actually try it. If you haven't already, what are you waiting for? It's the same active ingredients as Viagra, Cialis, and Levitra, but in chewable form and at a fraction of the cost. And you can take them anytime, day or night. So plan ahead or be ready whenever an opportunity arises. And the process is really simple. You'll sign up at BlueChew.com. You'll consult with one of their licensed medical providers. And once you're approved, you'll receive your prescription within days. And here's the best part. It's all online. That means no visits to the doctor's office, no awkward conversation, no waiting in line at the pharmacy. BlueChew's tablets are made in the USA, prepared and shipped directly to your door, all in a discreet package. But there won't be anything discreet about your package. BlueChew wants to help you have better sex. So discover your options at BlueChew.com. Chew it and do it. And we've got a special deal for our listeners. Try BlueChew free when you use our promo code JR at checkout. Just pay the $5 shipping. That's BlueChew.com. The promo code is JR to receive your first month free. Visit BlueChew.com for more details and important safety information. And we thank BlueChew for sponsoring today's podcast.
We love BlueChew. It works. It's a hell of a product. Gives you confidence, if nothing else. And when you're 72 years old and you still enjoy being with a significant other type person, BlueChew's the way to go. It works really, really well. I'm being very low key. It's a phenomenal discovery, and you're going to be. It'll be the best $5 that you ever spent.
How about that? That's a hell of a line right there. I don't think we'll beat that. The best $5 you'll ever spend is just on the shipping, because Blue Chew is free when you go to bluechew.com and use our promo code JR.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the first match on the show. We're finally here. It's showtime. It's the live pay-per-view broadcast, and we're starting things hot. It's a Money in the Bank ladder match, and it's got Fit Finlay. It's got Mark Henry. It's got Kofi Kingston. It's got MVP. It's got Shelton Benjamin, Christian, and Kane. And the winner for the second year in a row is CM Punk. This is a wild ladder match because you've got crazy. I mean, think of all the things we've seen Kofi Kingston do in matches like this. Think of how agile Shelton Benjamin is in matches like this. Think about how synonymous Christian is with ladders. But now let's throw in some monsters like Kane and Mark Henry.
They're catchers, Conrad.
Yes, sir.
That's why they were there. They were catchers. And they caught another human being coming off that ladder in a safe manner. So that was a primary reason. Not that they didn't have star power. They did. But that's why you have a guy like Mark Henry or Kane in that battle royal. They catch people and they catch them safely. And that's very important in this match.
Very important. And Meltzer would say it was far from the best Money in the Bank match, but it was still really good. He gave it 3 3/4. Punk wins again. He's becoming Mr. Money in the Bank here. And then we get Kid Rock out to do a 15-minute concert. He's going to play for about 15 minutes before the Divas Battle Royal. And I know that Vince McMahon was a big Kid Rock guy, and I know Kid Rock's in the WWE Hall of Fame and certainly an ally for the WWE. But I got to tell you, as a fan, even if I were a big Kid Rock fan, and I'm not, but if I were, I'd still be like, I want to watch wrestling. I don't want to watch a concert. I understand it's a once a year thing and it's a spectacle, but where do you land on a concert right in the middle of the freaking wrestling show?
A little awkward.
Yeah.
A little awkward to me. I'm a Kid Rock fan too. And I know on the McMahon's plane, he played Kid Rock loud, and long. So we heard a lot of Kid Rock. It's just funny watching Vince chair dance. You ever chair dance, Conrad?
Yeah, I did once on Busted Open. Seriously, we had a little chair dance off, and Tawny Katane said I was the winner. They went to a commercial, and then that nothing happened in La Greca put the fix in. Mark Henry was privy to all this. He knows the truth. I won. I'm uncrowned, but I won.
Attaboy.
Hey, the Divas Battle Royal. We got Santino Marella. He's going to win the Divas Battle Royal.
Yeah.
There's 24 other women there. Kelly, Layla, Jillian Hall, Nikki and Brie Bella, Michelle McCool, Beth Phoenix, Rosa Mendez, Maria, Melina, Eve Torres, Katie Burchill, Gail Kim, Alicia Fox, Maurice, Mickey James, Natalia, Tiffany. And then there's some special returning guests like Victoria and Sunny and Joy Giovanni and Jackie Gata and Tori Wilson and Molly Holly. I mean, goodness gracious. This is 25 folks here for 25 years of WrestleMania, but then a guy wins it. A little silly. What say you?
Very silly. You're being kind.
Yeah.
It's very silly, but I did like the shot of the group shot of all the ladies there in the ring, because it's just on display an amazing array of talent with various levels of success and skill set. So I like that. I like the look. I guess I like the poster more than I like the match. And that's probably not a nice thing to say, but but I thought it was an interesting attraction. It certainly for a male audience was pleasing to the eye.
Well, yeah, I mean, listen, I know it's a different era. This is before the women's revolution. This was before women's wrestling is being taken seriously, but you had so much great wrestling talent in there. I don't care what anybody says. Nikki Bella went on to be a very good performer. I don't think we have to explain anything further about ladies like Mickey James or Beth Phoenix or Gail Kim. I mean, these are awesome wrestlers, including Molly Holly. And I know there were some more valet types like Sunny in this, but well, the ladies deserve better, and I'm glad they're getting better at WrestleMania this weekend.
Oh yeah, they're getting plenty of great exposure. I liked I like the fact that some of those women had a chance to get back on TV and reintroduce themselves. Example, Alicia Fox. I've always felt like, pardon me, that she was very, very underrated. Very athletic, very flexible. And she, as a matter of fact, lives here in Jacksonville. I took her to breakfast here a while back, out there at the TPC golf course. She's doing some indies and doing autograph things, but she lives here in my little part of the world.
I didn't know you went to eat breakfast at Sawgrass. That's a cool little spot they got there, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
it's like you keep looking for the guy on what was this Ted something played the judge on what's that movie about golf? Bill Murray was in.
Caddyshack.
Caddyshack.
Yeah.
Yeah. I kept looking for that guy.
Ted Knight.
Ted Knight. He was ubiquitous in the movie, and it was I thought he was just a great character. So same when he was on his TV show. What was he on, WKRP or?
I don't recall.
But anyway, he's a very talented guy, funny guy. But yeah, it's a nice place. If you're ever in this area, give it a shot, man. This food's great. The atmosphere is superb, and it's affordable, believe it or not.
Let's also mention that Meltzer would say that the WWE really hung you announcers out to dry with this Divas Battle Royal, because you're trying to play dumb at that Santino Morello, and you act like you don't know. And I know that that's part of the gag sometimes in wrestling, but is that the most frustrating thing when, we sort of have to pretend the announcers are dumb in order for this to be a thing? Like, how would you not know?
You never book your announcers if you're dumb.
Yes.
For any reason. Because if you're not going to believe me now, why should you believe me later?
Right.
When we're in main event territory in the deep water. Yeah, you don't want to ever do that. And that was the case there. It was very awkward. And it prevents you, and now some people are going to disagree with this. That's cool. It prevents you from putting your heart and soul in something, because it's just so weak, so thin. It just doesn't make sense. By the way, that thanks to Bull Ramus, Mary Tyler Moore was the show that Ted Knight was on, played the news anchor, and he was funny in hell. So yeah, it was awkward. It was awkward. You could have had just have a battle royal to get everybody a payday that they're going to bitch about anyway. How do you pay 25 women and that basically all do the same role? You basically pay them all about the same money. How do you differentiate? Why would I pay Molly Holly more than Tori Wilson, for example?
Right.
Just using two names. You wouldn't, because they're all going to talk. They're all going to know what they make. There's no confidentiality, even with someone's own personal finances, which is really, really silly. So, and a lot of them just looked at it as another way to buy another Louis Vuitton bag.
There you go.
And, so there you have it. Another case, as my granny would say, there you are.
Well, there we were with Chris Jericho wrestling a handicap match. As you may recall, it's Chris Jericho wrestling Ricky Steamboat, Roddy Piper, and Jimmy Snuka. I'm sure Flair would have been in there had he not lost a retirement match a year prior. Meltzer would say at one point it was scheduled to be a gauntlet match instead of a handicap match. And the first few minutes were terrible because Snuka could barely move. And poor Piper was wearing a tight t-shirt because of whatever problem he has with his stomach makes him look like he's 280 pounds. Snuka couldn't do anything, but Piper tried. Jericho eliminated Snuka in 3 minutes and 40 seconds with the Walls of Jericho. He pinned Piper with an enziguri in 4 minutes and 40 seconds. And then he did a singles match with Steamboat, which had to be a thrill since Steamboat was Jericho's favorite wrestler as a kid. Steamboat looked great for being 56 years old and having not wrestled since 1994. It was probably only sad for people who saw Steamboat in his peak, because it was a guy who never got tired and never missed a spot. And well, here he got tired and missed a few spots. Jericho pinned him after a code breaker, and then Flair jumps in and starts throwing chops at Jericho, which got the biggest reaction by far of anything on the show up to this point. But Jericho turned the tables on Flair with a backdrop and a code breaker, laying him out. And Jericho then turned his attention to Mickey Rourke, who's sitting ringside with Frank Shamrock. As expected, after much taunting to build it up, Rourke got in the ring. Rourke, who boxed professionally when he was younger, went into a boxing stance and threw a jab. Jericho went into a boxing stance and Rourke threw a left that looked terrible, and Jericho went down. Rourke didn't get much of a reaction, and people didn't boo the knockout as bad as it looked, but they did groan. The Rourke stuff didn't get nearly the post-show media reaction one would have thought. The fact that Rourke never appeared on Raw to build up the feud meant most really didn't care. It ended up backwards because Steamboat and Flair, far more popular than Rourke, were used to set up Rourke's heat, which he didn't have much of. So an excellent breakdown there from Dave Meltzer. I, for one, didn't think Ricky looked bad at all. I know that Meltzer's picking it apart, but think about that, man. He wrestled last in 94, and now here it is 15 years later. Goodness gracious.
It's not 1989, Conrad.
Yes.
It's not 3 Flair, Steamboat, the trilogy. That'll never be replicated. That'll never be duplicated or topped. But that's how I look at that situation. Jericho should be applauded and lauded for his efforts on this particular show, because think about this and how the guys do business these days. Those guys probably did less of pre-show planning, but when you add Rourke in there, Snuka's limited, Roddy limited, now you're depending on a veteran, legit veteran, and Ricky Steamboat to carry the load to get to some weak ass spots with Mickey Rourke because he was afraid to do anything. I'm very I'm biased as far as this one's concerned, but I'm glad that I did the payoffs. I'm glad that Flair and Roddy, Steamboat, of course, all got good paydays. And Jericho got a good payday. Now, because it's discretionary, meaning it's up to the decision of the decision makers. In this case, the ultimate decision maker, we all know, is Vince McMahon. But number 2 on that payroll list was me. So I thought those guys all got good money. Nobody bitched. And Lord knows, I've had plenty of conversations with talents about their WrestleMania payoffs, because some of them believe that they're going to be able to retire off one payday. And that's, unless you're Stone Cold or Rock or somebody making $1 million a night, that ain't too likely.
I don't think you can retire off $1 million payday anyway. Matt Hardy is going to be wrestling Jeff Hardy here. It's an Extreme Rules match at WrestleMania 25. They go 13 minutes and 13 seconds. Of course, Jeff is one of the biggest baby faces WWE ever had. And they're going to push in the video and during commentary that it was actually Matt Hardy who set fire to Jeff's mobile home and killed his dog. As you may recall, Jeff Hardy had a real life house fire at his home, and it burned his home. And unfortunately he lost his dog through that. And that becomes part of the show, which I thought was questionable.
Weak is weak, Conrad, is weak.
Yeah.
Weaker than cat piss. That's weak.
Meltzer would say Jeff wasn't anywhere close to as over as he'd been before the feud started, even though Jim Ross tried to push it like no rock star before 70,000 fans ever got a bigger reaction. There was very little heat for the match itself, only pops when they do weapon spots. They set up 2 ladders side by side. Jeff climbed to the top of an 8-footer and then vaulted over the 10-footer next to it, and Matt moved while Jeff crashed on his ass, missing a leg drop. Matt then put Jeff's head inside a chair and used a twist of fate and got the 3. The finish looked great. If you're watching with us on YouTube at grillingjr.com, what a visual this is. It got 3.25 stars. They're doing what they can to get Matt Hardy over as a single star here. Of course, he's best known as a tag team wrestler Right. But goodness gracious, man, fans did not want to see this. Like when the reaction for Jeff was not just the mind numbing response you think, it just tells me fans didn't want to see these brothers fight.
Did you want to see them fight? I didn't.
No, I don't. I still don't.
They are, great booking is putting talents in the very best position to steal the show or have a classic type match. The Hardys, when you think of the Hardys, you think of tag teams. Their legacy of the TLC matches with the Dudleys, Edge, and Christian can't be erased. Can't forget it. It was amazing stuff. So when I think of the Hardys, I think of tag team wrestling in a good way. But I didn't want to see them against each other. I'm not big on that brother versus brother stuff. Now, the Usos may steal the show and kill it this weekend. I don't know. But it's not something, it doesn't seem totally realistic that two brothers, real brothers, would go at it on a stage as large as WrestleMania. It just didn't work for me.
Well, what does work for me, Rey Mysterio pins JBL to win the Intercontinental title. We've mentioned that JBL is hurting for certain, serious back problems. He's the Intercontinental champion, and he's going to drop it to Rey Mysterio here, and it takes all of 21 seconds. JBL attacks Mysterio before the bell, demands the bell be sounded. The ref checks with Mysterio to see if he's ready to start the match or call it off. Mysterio says start it, takes over with a drop kick, a 619, a splash to the floor, and the pin. And then after the match, JBL looked at the crowd and said, I quit. That's his retirement. And man, it was quite the perfect send off for this JBL character, was it not?
Yeah. A man of few words, no doubt about it. And John's just that way. He's good at sound bites. You know, he was a very underrated broadcaster, in my opinion, and could still walk in there again tomorrow and do a great job. He's had a good aptitude for communicating, good communicator. And, but that seemed to fit him. I quit. So, but his back just said, no more, we're done. And you can't, that's the big thing that fans got to realize. Most things in wrestling, many things, I should say, in wrestling, end up with a flat back bump. Time and time again. Guys don't land on their face all the time. They land on their back more often than not, by far. So when you get a back ailment, you know, all of a sudden you got a bad hand dealt to you, because how do you get around it? How do you get around not taking back, bumps, flat back bumps? You really can't. I'm sure what about Andre and what about Abdullah and some of these big guys? But they're the exception, the big exception, and not the rule. So anyway, John did what John had to do, and he had a great career. He overexceeded what. I'll be honest with you. We hired him because Jerry Briscoe was high on him. And when Jerry Briscoe was high on somebody, I had no problem endorsing that decision. So we hired John at Jerry Briscoe's encouragement. And John far exceeded what many of us thought that he might. I thought he was a well-spoken Dick Murdoch. And I even had a talk with him one time about that. So, if I wanted Murdoch, I'd hire him. So because John had more distance. He had more range, because he could talk so well. One of the best talkers ever in wrestling.
Well, let's talk about one of the best matches in the history of wrestling. It's the Undertaker and Shawn Michaels. It finally happened at WrestleMania. It's WrestleMania 25. It's a match that when it was over, Bobby Heenan said is the greatest match he ever saw. It's a match that when it was over, Shawn Michaels told his wife on the drive home, I'm not sure I'll ever be able to top that. They go 30 minutes and 41 seconds. There's dueling chants. The crowd is standing for a lot of the match. Undertaker gets the biggest reaction on the show, except for Stone Cold. There's a great series of moves and reverses. I mean, we really just can't do this one justice. I want to encourage you to go out of your way to watch it. I can't believe, as silly as this is, I got to at least mention, it got 4 3/4 stars. in the Observer. I don't know how this wasn't a 5-star match. If this isn't a 5-star match, I don't think I know what one looks like. What'd you think?
I agree with that. I don't know what they didn't do to take away that quarter of a point if it's a big deal. And we make it a big deal because we talk about how many stars that Meltzer anoints a match. And I, like I said all along, Dave is an expert. He is. And he has a right to his opinion. Whether we agree or not agree, it's irrelevant. But yeah, that was a 5-star match in my book for sure. Like I said, I've called a lot of great ones. Been lucky to have the assignments to call a lot of great matches. I never called a greater match than that one. Undertaker and Shawn, I don't think we talk about it enough. Again, if I had a wrestling school or a territory, that match would be required viewing.
Yes.
Study it, understand how these guys did their transitions was brilliant. Meaning this, folks, Michaels is on the offense in this picture on YouTube, dropping an elbow on Taker, who's patiently waiting. But when Shawn's on the offense, how does he get to this? How do you transfer and into selling? How do you make that? How do you make that transformation and have that match evolve? What did you do to get Shawn in trouble so Taker could take advantage? Those transitions were brilliant. So if you watch this match, watch how they changed from offense to defense almost seamlessly, and they always connect the dots. Look at the height of that, man. That's teamwork right there. There's not a lot of guys would go up that high because they know they're going to be slammed very hard. But Shawn's a gamer, man. That's why many people consider him the best that's ever been in the ring. And I'm sure Taker on this night, certainly using this night as an illustration, that was a great facial expression there. Again on YouTube, Taker. I think Shawn just kicked out, and that's the expression that Taker gave us. Priceless.
Go out of your way to see this one. If you haven't seen it in a long time, it's worth another look. This is about as perfect of a WrestleMania match as you can get. Meltzer would point out that The Undertaker goes for another tombstone, but Shawn counters with a DDT and quote, "That spot was botched." But goodness gracious, 4 3/4 stars. How
many spots did they get right, Conrad?
The rest of them.
How many spots? Yeah, the rest of them.
Yes.
Oh, let's not talk about any of those motherfuckers.
Well, it's also worth mentioning too, in a real fight, everything's not going to look smooth and perfect.
Oh, that's true.
In a real fight, I mean, if you've watched UFC, there's long stretches where guys are just seemingly laying on top of each other. They're struggling. It's a real fight. And in a real struggle, it doesn't look like Cirque du Soleil. It's not supposed to.
That's right.
Either way, I encourage you to go watch this one. It is unbelievable and I love it, but I also feel bad for who had to follow it. It's John Cena in a 3-way for the world title with Edge and Big Show. John Cena wins. He comes up with an Eminem style ring entrance. There's like 200 Cena-like clones out here. It's pretty fun. I enjoyed the entrance and the match is what it is. It's 3 1/4 stars. Cena's going to give the attitude adjustment to Show and then give it to Edge.
Notice, Conrad, excuse me. Did you notice those AWA-like t-shirts?
Isn't that great?
Yeah, that's a nice little touch right there. That's the exact replica of the old AWA standard t-shirt back in the day. But all this did for me was these guys took up space. They had to have a locker room.
I was thinking that, like with all the lumberjacks in the tag team match, and then 25 divas, and now 200 John Cenas. It's like the backstage area is a fucking arena by itself.
Cast of thousands, and it was overkill.
Yeah.
Now, luckily for me and Cole and Lawler, we were far away from all that shit.
Yeah.
We were at ringside or somewhere down in there. And so anyway, it was a crowded night. I guess we're lucky that we had the damn thing in the stadium because they had more locker room space.
Yeah, I mean, I guess lucky's the word. We're also lucky that we got just a second. We did get the visual, just a second, of Cena having both Big Show and Edge on his back. Of course, Edge is going to fall off, so he'll do the move to both guys separately. But you can see they tried something, and boy, we're talking freaking superhero strength for John Cena to do that. A normal human being collapses under all that weight, and they're in damn traction. John Cena is not that guy.
Did you see what John Cena wrote on the cover of my book?
Isn't that awesome?
Yeah, it was heartwarming.
Yeah,
I got tears in my eyes. You know, I really did. When I met John Cena, he was moving furniture.
Okay.
Not in the old wrestling term, but he was, bodybuilding and personal trainer. But I think his primary gig was working as a furniture mover and going to Rick Baston's school down there in Southern California. But he's freakishly strong. When at his best, I don't know that we ever had anybody stronger. He's scary. You know, one of the reasons I hired John Cena was I got a recommendation from one of his old college coaches who had taken a job at Oklahoma. He's still there, Scott Kolak. And I said, this kid is trying to get a job with us. And he went to your old school. Who was it? He said, I think I know who it was. And it was, of course, he was right. It's John. So I got probably the most rousing endorsement, Conrad, that I ever got for a talent. First guy in the locker room, first guy in the weight room, last guy to leave, team captain, played center. Cena was a center and an All-American. And he's not an oversized center. He was pretty lean, but he was strong as a bull. So that spot was one that I'll never forget. That spot was probably the most memorable thing that we're seeing right here. One of the most memorable things I could recall at a WrestleMania as a singular spot. So it's pretty damn amazing.
What a visual. Next up, we get the Hall of Fame inductions. Nobody's going to get a huge reaction except for Steamboat and Austin. Not even Kevin Von Erich, which kind of shocked me watching it, but I guess it was like 26 years ago since, the Von Erichs were on top. Austin's going to drive an ATV to the ring, drive around the ring, drink some beer. The crowd's eating it up. Right before he leaves, he comes over and does a toast with you. I mean, you're probably his closest friend in the company for a long time. Pretty cool thing to see you and JR, or you and Austin doing a little beer toast at ringside.
You know, one thing about this illness, this journey I've been on the last year or so, look, just keep that picture up there, Bull. I was carrying around more chins in those days.
Yeah, you were.
Yeah. I weighed 195 yesterday.
Dude, you're ready. You're under 205 live weight. Look at you. We can get you a cruiserweight shot if you want.
Yeah. Give me I need to work. But seriously, that was totally impromptu, had never been discussed. And he's wearing my hat. And, you can tell how close the guy is if he allows somebody else to wear his hat.
Yes.
I'm serious. And there he is. The beer set. Lawler's got his head turned because he don't want to get no alcohol on him.
No.
Lawler, lips that touch alcohol will never touch mine. I've always doubted that theory with Jerry, but be that as it may, it's another topic. But that was a cool moment. Look at that beer on my hat. Think I cared?
Nope. No.
Good hat. Good hats hold up. So that was a cool moment. For me, that was one of the highlights of the entire WrestleMania. Austin coming over and doing that deal. I've got that in Oklahoma. I've got the can that he used, a can of beer that he left there. And I have a couple pictures of that moment. They made their rounds over the years. But it was fun. It made me feel really good that Steve was willing to stop what he was doing for a moment to recognize our friendship. There I am. That can right there is in my home in Norman. I'm holding up right now. I keep the craziest shit. I don't know what's going to happen when OJR is not around anymore. My kids are going to have a hell of a time trying to separate all my memorabilia of what has value and what doesn't.
Well, make sure they got my number. I'll point them in the right direction. Let's talk about the main event. It's Triple H taking on Randy Orton. They're going to go 23 minutes and 33 seconds. Triple H retains the title And they told the story early, establishing Scott Armstrong, warning Triple H about being disqualified because it would cost him the title. They're going to, of course, going to go outside the ring, standing on the English announce table, and he's going to set up a pedigree. Orton's going to backdrop out of it, and Triple H lands on the Spanish announce table. It doesn't break, and that makes it look like it hurts even more. Orton hits a DDT on the floor, and the finish would see Orton throw Triple H into Armstrong. Orton then hits the RKO, but of course there's no ref to count the pin. So Orton goes outside, picks up the sledgehammer, but as he's coming through the ropes, Triple H punts him. With Armstrong still down, Triple H hits Orton with the sledgehammer, hits a pedigree, and Armstrong recovers and they make the fall. 2.5 stars. It's considered one of the more lackluster main events in WrestleMania history, which is ironic considering the build for this match is still the most watched YouTube video in WWE history. Meltzer would say the storyline acknowledgement of Triple H as a member of the McMahon family, even though everyone knew, seems to have cast him in a different light with the audience. Whether this was just the audience in Houston, the fans who traveled from all those countries for the weekend, which also booed Cena both nights more than Cena has gotten booed in a while, or something more serious will probably be determined in a few weeks. Another problem in the final angle is Triple H versus Orton involved the McMahons joining in and brawling with DiBiase and Rhodes. With the strong storyline, people expected a brawl instead of a normal wrestling match. And everyone was sure Vince and Shane were going to interfere, so the heat wasn't going to pick up until they did. But they didn't, even though there were certain spots in near falls where fans were looking for the ramp. They were expecting the run-in. Did you think that this main event was lackluster or missed the mark? I mean, I know that it was impossible to follow Undertaker.
That's the deal.
Shawn. Okay.
You just hit the nail on the head right there.
Okay.
You answered your own question. They nor anybody else on our roster could have followed the performance, sans maybe Rock and Austin, but nobody else could follow the performance of Undertaker and Shawn. It was such an indelible impression on the fans there. They had just witnessed, at least in my opinion, I'm maybe over dramatic because that's my role in real life more often than not. Impossible to follow. The people, it's a hangover, and people couldn't kick out of it. So I didn't think that Triple H and Randy had a bad match at all, but they couldn't follow that classic, a once in a lifetime performance by two of the greatest stars in the history of pro wrestling, period. No matter what company, Undertaker and Shawn Michaels.
We should mention that Meltzer would say that besides Austin driving to the ring and drinking beer in the Undertaker Shawn match, this was a lackluster show that just wasn't as good or well received as the No Way Out pay-per-view a month prior. And he says that there was some disjointed hype. Maybe we lacked a cohesive battle plan for the show. And maybe it was just the fact that fans buy based on the name WrestleMania. They plan their travel months in advance just because they want to go to WrestleMania. And maybe they were resting on their laurels a little bit here. Where would you rank WrestleMania 25? Does that one match with The Undertaker and Shawn keep it highly rated for you? Is this top 5, top 10, maybe
top
lower?
10 for sure?
Okay.
Top 10 for sure based on that one match.
Wow. That's strong.
Yeah, without a doubt. And maybe higher if I went back and looked at them. You know, the 3 Austin Rock matches are significant in my career and in the annals of WWE. Austin and Bret Hart at WrestleMania 13 was one of my all-time favorite matches of any generation for any company at any time. But Undertaker and Shawn did something that people are still talking about. Like I said, Conrad and I are encouraging you guys.
Yes.
If you're going to watch one match and you're a wrestler and you want to learn about psychology and transitions, if you're a fan and you want to know more about the intricacies of the match, look at how Shawn and Undertaker handled the transitions of going from offense to defense, from going to being the aggressor to selling. It's landmark stuff, man. It really is. It's just amazing shit. It's master class level. Not to steal something from our friends at Busted Open. But it's a masterclass type scenario.
Let's talk about that main event. Do you think Wrestling Historian over on Instagram, he wants to know, do you think Shawn Michaels and Undertaker should have been the main event instead?
Well, in hindsight, yeah, it's a no-brainer. But you're going to close with your
title.
You're going to close the title match. And as you should.
Yeah.
But the title match has got to outperform what precedes it. And like I said earlier, and there's no knock on Hunter or Randy. Nobody could top what we saw with Taker and Shawn. It's just that significant.
Bijan Homeboy 07 says, do you think the Undertaker Shawn match for the Hell in a Cell in 1997, that's where Kane debuted, the very first Hell in a Cell, do you think that was better than their two WrestleMania matches?
No, I think WrestleMania 25 is untoppable.
Yeah.
Now, did I enjoy that Hell in a Cell match? You damn right I did. And I thought it brought out a side of Shawn Michaels that showed the audience and the fans just how tough he was. Because he's never going to be the biggest dog in the fight, but he can show toughness and heart, passion. He did all that in that Hell in a Cell match. It was another great piece of business. But WrestleMania 25 stands on its own pedestal.
I can't wait to ask you this question. This comes to us from Alexander. He wants to know, JR, thank you for all the memories. My question is, WrestleMania 25, the Taker Shawn match had a 3-man booth with you, King, and Cole for the only time I remember. I thought it added to the match significantly. Did anyone think about making it a 3-man booth for pay-per-views instead of multiple 2-man calls?
I had never heard that conversation, but I think everybody was pretty pleased with the announcing on WrestleMania 25. It seemed like everybody was. They were congratulatory, which is always nice to hear. But I don't think that conversation, at least in public, if you will, took place. To McMahon's eye, more is better. He could have, and maybe in a perfect world, he'd like to have 2 3-man teams. Hell, I don't know. How do you get, I don't want to be in his head anyway. I don't know. But no, I don't think it was ever discussed. But man, I'd have been all for it because I thought we sailed through that thing. Again, we're dancing to, we're live. There's no net. So, and I thought we all came together as pros and called the match as it was intended to be called.
Let's tell everybody right now what we're doing next week. We're talking Gold Dust. We're going to be talking Dustin Rhodes specifically. We're going to be talking about a legendary member of wrestling royalty, the son of a plumber, and the older brother of Cody Rhodes, who by this time next week is probably the WWE Universal or World or whatever it is. He's the top guy next week, we hope, or we expect. We'd love to hear your questions. If you've got a question about Dustin or Gold Dust or any of that, man, we would love to hear from you. You can ask your questions over at our YouTube. It's grillingjr.com. That's where you can find all things JR. You want to make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn the notifications bell on. And if you're looking to get JR to talk about your product or service, that's easy. Check out advertisewithjr.com. We've got some brand new merch and swag for you available as well over at grillingjrtees.com, including some brand new stuff celebrating 50 years in wrestling for Jim Ross. We think you're going to dig it. Check it out, grillingjrtees.com. And if you're looking to get some barbecue going in time for the spring, it's starting to warm up here in Alabama, and I'm sure it is where you are. Everybody starts firing up those grills, and you can't do that really without jrsbbq.com. They've got the hot sauce now. They've got the main event mustard. They've got the Chipotle ketchup, and they've got not one, but 2 types of barbecue sauce. One that's hot and one that's the OG. I prefer the original, but my favorite thing at jrsbbq.com, it's not even the autographed memorabilia, but he's giving away the trading cards. Like he's really giving them away. But the all-purpose seasoning, Jim, I had it yesterday on cod. That was my first time doing it on cod. My wife said, "Hey, I've got this fish I've got to cook before it goes bad." Of course, she just finished her fitness competition. And I said, "Well, what fish is it?" Thinking it's going to be tuna or something like that. She says cod. And I go, She threw some all-purpose seasoning on there from JR. It was great. It makes everything better.
It changed everything.
It did.
It changed the flavor profile, the whole 9 yards. I have my JR's all-purpose seasoning sitting right in my spice rack, right by my stove. And I figure ways on the spur of the moment to use it as seasoning. We can all use salt and pepper. I get that. But this is a combination. It's got a little salt and pepper in it, but along with a lot of other things. But I found it's wonderful. I'm a big salmon guy, and I cook a lot of salmon. Probably at least once a week, I have salmon. And I season it with JR's all-purpose seasoning because it just makes it so much more flavorful.
Hell yeah.
Takes the gaminess out of it and the fish taste. It's just a great accompaniment. It's a great tag team partner, if you will. So it's a store that never closes, folks. Great for gifts, all these type of things. What's Father's Day? It's coming up pretty soon, right?
And Mother's Day. And let me tell you, Mama needs some good eating too. Check it out, jrsbbq.com. Something for everybody. And it's great for a wrestling fan too. And I know a lot of folks who listen to this, man, they order a bottle of sauce as a novelty to set up their display with their action figures or their title belts or their collectibles. I get that. I've done that. But I'm going to encourage you, buy two, try one, and then display one. And what you're going to wind up doing is eating the one on the shelf and just ordering again. You'll be in a reorder situation, as my pal Jim says. And
That's
as
right.
he always reminds us every week, it costs nothing to look.
Not a damn thing, Connie. Not a damn thing, buddy.
jrsbbq.com is where you can catch it. And you can catch us right here next week on Grilling JR. We're going to be talking about Dustin Rhodes. We want your questions. Hit us up at grillingjr.com. And don't forget,
I got a lot of good stuff on Dustin and how that character came about. And it was kind of complex, to say the least, because we were treading in waters that we had not treaded in before. So that'll be a fun show, without a doubt. Hey, Conrad, before we leave today, I want to send good wishes to Tony Schiavone. He lost his little dog, Bug.
Oh, man.
And that was just heartbreaking. I saw that, and it touched me, quite frankly. You know, I've my lifestyle. I don't have a dog here in Florida. I don't have a dog, and there it is. Good job, Bull. But there's Bug. Bug's no longer with us.
Bug is actually tattooed on Tony's body. Have you seen the Bug tattoo?
Yep.
It's
I sure have. That's commitment, isn't it?
It's his best friend. It's his best friend he ever had. We're actually going to be doing a memorial shirt for Bug. We've had a Bug shirt before, but I think we're going to crank out a couple of new designs. Good. We're going to be donating all the proceeds to an area animal shelter in Tony's area. As I understand it, they're planting a special dogwood tree, and they've got a nice little river stone in his honor that's going to be in the Schiavone yard. And they're going to have his remains in a nice little urn, and I'm sure a photo, but this was devastating for Mr. Schiavone. So I appreciate you saying that and mentioning that. And if you're a dog person and you hear this story, I found myself hugging and loving on my two dogs a little extra this week, just because of what Tony and Bug went through. Yeah,
me too. I don't have a dog, but I've had dogs.
Yes.
I love dogs. But when you live in a condo like this, and you're not here all the time, and then of course in Oklahoma, how would I raise a dog? I love a dog the way they should be loved, and not be there. Have somebody else feed it, take care of it, love it. It just don't work. So thoughts and prayers to Tony. I look forward to seeing him soon. Hopefully I'll see him in St. Louis and give him a big old hug for the loss of old Bug.
We're thinking about
hugs for bugs.
Hugs for bugs. I like it. And be sure to catch Tony this Saturday night. It's a special start time for Collision. We haven't mentioned that. I want to get this in. Collision is going to start at 11:30 Eastern this Saturday night. So if you're used to having your DVR do all the heavy lifting for you, you might want to check and make sure you don't miss it. Collision has a special start time. It's 11:30 at night. So hypothetically, if there's any other wrestling on Saturday, and boy, nothing comes to mind, when that's finished, switch over to Collision. It's an 11:30 start time. They're going to be going late night. I'm sure it's going to be a fun show, and our pal Tony will be on the call. That's Collision this Saturday night at 11:30. And we'll be back next week talking all things Dustin Rhodes right here on Grilling JR with the voice of professional wrestling, Mr. Jim Ross.
We appreciate you guys very much. I got some appearances coming up that you are you're becoming more aware of, easy for me to say. And I look forward to seeing all you guys. And on these appearances, I do plan on bringing books so I can sign them for you. So join us if you can.
We'll have all the information for JR's appearances on our Twitter and our Instagram and all of our social. So check us out, and we'll see you guys next week right here at grillingjr.com.
We appreciate you. Thanks for joining us.
Tax season is here, which means you've received or are expecting that tax refund any day now, and you're thinking about what to spend it on. How about a new home? With SaveWithConrad.com, we're helping renters become homeowners every single day, and it's more affordable than you think. You don't need perfect credit. You don't need a huge down payment. In fact, you may not need a down payment at all. At SaveWithConrad.com, we take the stress out of the home buying process. We'll determine your buying power. We'll even help you find a realtor. And unlike the banks, we don't say no. We say not yet, but here's how. So if you're not ready right now, we'll get you on a plan to be ready. Stop throwing your money away, paying someone else's mortgage with your rent, and start the path towards owning your own home today at SaveWithConrad.com. NMLS number 32416, equal housing lender. SaveWithConrad.com.